Hey, welcome to Mooney Reads. My name is Beck, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I plan on reading throughout the month of May. These are only going to be the readathons that last throughout the whole month. I do have one or two things that I'm going to join that only take up part of the month, but there will be separate videos for those. I haven't decided if I'm doing TBRs or just vlogs. We'll see what happens. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on this month, so I have several things that I'm gonna try to be a part of. Some of them more, I guess, like intensely than others. Most of these I only have one or two books for because I did want to be involved with all of them. But the last one that I'm going to talk about, the Asian Readathon, I actually do want to have like one book per prompt for. To start off with, of course, I'm going to be continuing the buddy read that I've been doing with Brianna from Rad Reads. We really only have one section left that we're looking at, so this is probably going to be the last month that I'm reading this, so that's cool. I may have a couple of other books that roll over from April, but it's currently still April, so I don't know which ones those are. But if you watch my monthly wrap-up, you'll know what those are as well. Next, I've got a book club pick. I'm going to be reading the Climate Fiction Book Club's pick again. So this month they're doing The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. This is a dystopian that was published in the early 90s, I think. It's supposed to talk about a lot of the stuff that ended up being super relevant and is currently super relevant. Octavia Butler is brilliant, so I'm excited to finally read a whole one of her novels. Next, we can move on to the readathons. The Buzzwordathon is one that has been going on throughout the whole year, and this month's buzzword to follow is home or house. And the book that I've chosen for this is Other Words for Home by Jasmin Warga. This is a middle grade novel written in verse that talks about a girl's experience moving from Syria to the United States. And that is the only title for the Buzzwordathon that I'm going to be attempting this month. The next readathon, I have two books that I want to complete for. This is the 1900s to 1950 readathon, and the goal of this is to read books published between 1900 and 1950. It was actually really neat going through some of my books and seeing when they were all written. I kind of anticipated that I would have a lot written after like the year 2000, but I have a ton that were written between 1950 and 2000. So if anyone has a readathon for that, I'll partake. But the two books that I chose for the 1900s to 1950s readathon, I've got a fiction book and a nonfiction book. The fiction book that I have for that is The Well of Loneliness by Radclyffe Hall. This is a classic piece of lesbian literature and trans literature. I don't know a ton about the details of the plot other than there's a romance involved and it's sad. But it was also like one of the first in its time to speak positively about being gay. So I need to get to it. It's been on a couple of TBRs before. Last year it was on at least two. It is chunky and older, which I think those are the two reasons why I've been intimidated by it, but I would really like to get to it this month. The nonfiction pick that I have is Reformer Revolution by Rosa Luxemburg, which is an important political document, kind of talking about socialism, but it's also kind of important in the canon for looking at communism. That's my understanding from the little bit in here and the Wikipedia page. So I'm excited to get to this. This is kind of a newly acquired one, and it's pretty short, so hopefully I can get through it this month. The next readathon that I would like to participate in is the Booknetathon, and I thought this was a really neat initiative. There's a bingo board, and each space in the bingo board focuses on a different creator, so you pick what books you're reading kind of based on a different booktuber, which I think I fairly frequently pick up books because of booktubers and stuff like that, so I thought this was really cool and a nice way to highlight the creators that you watch, or to find new people to watch. Rather than doing a straight up bingo, I'm just picking one person from each row. I can technically do a bingo, and I had books planned out for that, but I wasn't really feeling the books. If my mind changes part of the way through the month, you might see a bingo, because there are several people on here that I watch that I could definitely pick out a book for, but this is what I've decided to do. For the first row, I'll be reading for Bear from Et tu Brody. The book that I chose to read because of them is Feed by Tommy Pico. And they actually have a vlog, I think, where they read Tommy Pico books. So I'll be sure to link that in the description so you can check that out. This is a poetry collection from an Indigenous author. I'm not 100% sure all of the things that they'll be talking about, but I'm excited for it. For row 2, I chose the small or new booktuber space. Small booktuber, they said, was below 500 followers or subscribers, whatever the word is. But for this, I chose Amanda from Butch Poetics, and I'll actually be doubling up for their prompt with The Well of Loneliness, because they mentioned it in their recommendations video for trans literature, so I will also be linking their video so you can check that out. For row 3, I chose the free space, and the person that I chose for the free space is a booktuber and an author tuber, Sim Kern. So I will be reading their book, Depart, which is a climate fiction sci-fi book that focuses on a trans guy from Texas who's just dealt with a hurricane. I think most of this takes place during the aftermath, from what I understand from the back. But as he's dealing with all of this, he starts seeing the ghost of his great-grandfather who fled Nazi Germany. So you're getting stuff about, like, climate justice, but also stuff about identity. It seems like it's going to be really cool. And for the final row, I'll also be doubling up a book again. But I chose Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin, who I associate with middle grade. So for them, I will be reading Other Words for Home, which I've already talked about. So that brings us to the Asian Readathon, which is hosted by With Cindy. May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So this is going on kind of in conjunction with that. Although you don't have to read specifically Asian American authors, it's kind of Asian authors in general. Most of what I have is written by Asian American authors, but not all of them. And I had a really hard time picking for this, just because I had several books that I really wanted to get to. So I think this is the list of books that I'm going to go with, but it could change between now and the end of the month. With the Asian Readathon, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, I can count. For the Asian Readathon, there are 5 different prompts, but as well as doing these 5 prompts, there is the additional challenge of reading a book by somebody of a different ethnicity for each prompt, particularly so that people aren't just focusing on, like, China and Japan, like the countries that usually get the most attention with stuff like this. So I'm going to go through and talk about each book that I chose to represent this prompt. But I might, at the end, also touch on the books that I have that I might try to read as well. Or instead, if my, mood reading heart decides that it wants something different. So, the first prompt is to read a book by an Asian author. For that, I'm going to be reading The Son of Good Fortune by Lysley Tenorio. This is a recent buy for me. This is actually the most recent thing that I bought. A little bit on a whim. Somebody had asked me a question about this because they were trying to set up a table preemptively at work. I work at a bookstore. And I read the back of the book, and I sat with it for a while, and I just needed to get it. So I'm just going to read you the back of the book, since that's kind of got a couple of things that reeled me in. Excel tries to seem like an unremarkable American teenager, but his family is far from normal. His mother, Maxima, was once a Filipina B-movie action star who now scams men online. The old man they live with is not his grandfather, but Maxima's lifelong martial arts trainer. And years ago, on Excel's 10th birthday, Maxima revealed a secret that he must keep forever. Excel is undocumented, and one accidental slip could uproot his entire life. Casting aside the paranoia of his childhood, Excel decides to join his girlfriend on a journey south to an off-the-grid desert city where he can finally forge his own path. But after years of trying to be invisible, who does he want to become? And is it possible to put down roots in a country that has always considered you an outsider? At once critical and hopeful, The Son of Good Fortune is a luminous story of a mother and son testing the strength of their bond to their country and each other. So, identity, family, scamming men. Sounds like it has potential. And the next prompt is to read a book featuring an Asian protagonist. So for that, I'll be reading Starfish by Akemi Bowman. This is a young adult kind of coming of age story of a part Japanese girl who has been trying to get into kind of the school of her dreams, but doesn't get into it. And that really kind of messes everything up. And on top of that, she's also dealing with an abusive relative. So this is kind of her coming to terms with identity, family, that sort of thing. From my understanding, I think it's going to be sort of emotional. I haven't heard a ton of things about it. I've seen it suggested a lot of places. But I'm still not 100% sure what to expect. But I really like this cover. And I was able to get it used, which is always good. The next prompt is to read a book by an Asian author in your favorite genre. And I have a really hard time picking favorites, but for the sake of the prompt, I went with graphic novels, specifically gay graphic novels. So, I'm going to be reading The Magic Fish by Trung Lee Nguyen. This is got fantasy elements, but the main piece of the story, from my understanding of the back of the book, is this boy is kind of wanting to come out to his family, but his parents don't speak English very well, but he doesn't know how to come out to them in Vietnamese. So in order to navigate this, he kind of uses fairy tales. I'm not 100% sure what to expect, like how magical or how fantastical it gets, but I'm really excited. This is one that I've been wanting to read for a while, but just haven't gotten my hands on a copy. So I'm stoked to get to it. And this is one that uses only certain colors and certain contexts, which I like the collections that kind of only use one or two colors. So I am super stoked for this. The rest of this video is coming to you with significantly poorer lighting because I didn't realize that the last part of this video didn't film right. The rest of it got deleted because I ran out of space and I didn't realize it until it was dark outside. And my ring light technically works, but the thing, it's no longer attached to the thing. So I don't know how to use it. I would need to rig it, and I'm not about to figure out all that shit. So the next prompt is to read a non-fiction book by an Asian author. And for that, I have I Hope We Choose Love, a trans girl's notes from the end of the world by Kai Chen Tom. This is actually the first book that is not written by an Asian American. The author is Chinese Canadian. And this is a collection of essays about being trans in the queer community. Just judging by the names of these essays, this looks like it's going to be really excellent. I didn't realize until after buying it that this is the same person who wrote Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars, which I have not read, but I've really wanted to read. I've just never gotten a copy. So this makes me extra excited to read this book. Then the final prompt is to read a book by an Asian author that isn't US-centric. For that, I have Are Women on the Ground? Essays by Arab Women from the Arab World. And this is an anthology written by journalists from all across what some people might call the Middle East. I don't know how accurate that term necessarily is, but most of those countries are actually in Asia. A lot of people don't think about Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan when we're talking about Asia, so there are people who definitely need to be centered in conversations around that. And like I mentioned, I technically have backups for all of these prompts, or like books that I'll read if I find extra time or if I find myself feeling a different mood, I guess. So I thought that I would talk about those too. I won't be talking about any that are queer graphic novels, but honestly, I have so much manga. And I'm going to read The Magic Fish, like that's for sure. But so far as the rest of the prompts are concerned, I definitely have other books that I would also like to read if it happens. And if it doesn't happen, now you know more about books that exist that you could possibly read. So, first I've got Minor Feelings by Cathy Park Hong. And this is one that's been going around for a good little while around the internet. This is a kind of collection of essays, nonfiction book, talking about her experience as Korean American. The next book that I have is Like a Love Story by Abdi Nazimen, which is a YA fiction that's set in the 1980s surrounding our main character, who is Iranian American and is closeted. From the inside flap, it seems like he starts dating a girl, despite the fact that he's gay, but this girl has a friend who is in the gay community and really heavily in AIDS activism. So I thought this would be super cool, and this is one that I've had for a good minute that I just haven't gotten around to yet. Then I have kind of a more academic book, if I get in the mood for that, and that is Model Minority Imperialism by Victor Bascara. And for this one, I'll just read a part of the back so you can sort of get the picture. At the beginning of the 20th century, soon after the conclusion to the Spanish-American War, the United States was an imperialistic nation, maintaining, often with the assistance of military force, a far-flung and growing empire. Focusing in terms of Asian American assimilation and the rise of the model minority myth, Model Minority Imperialism examines the resurgence of empire as a tool for acknowledging and understanding the legacy of American imperialism. So, if I get in the mood for something more academic, that is what I'm going to gravitate towards. Even if I don't read it next month or this coming month, I want to be able to read it sometime relatively soon. Then the final book that I have that I may read if I get in the mood for it and would fit this readathon, and that is The Map of Salt and Stars by Zeyn Joukhadar. I read 30 Names of Night, and it is my favorite book that I've read so far this year, so I really, really want to get into his other stuff. And The Map of Salt and Stars, I believe, was his first book. So, I'd really like to get to it. This focuses on a girl who is Syrian American but has to move from America back to Syria after her father dies. But there's a war going on, map making is involved, and that's about all that I know. So, those are some plans for May. If you're participating in any of these readathons, let me know. If you've read any of these books, also let me know, or if there's one that you think that I should prioritize. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye.